Hey there, saltwater anglers, and welcome to the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, your local report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. This podcast is part of the Great Days Outdoors Network, and each week we're talking with local experts to learn how we can become better anglers in our pursuits offshore, nearshore, and inshore. So, let's work together and keep this amazing fishery healthy and thriving for generations to come by remembering to protect what we pursue. Cooler temps have fish on the move, and our expert guides are helping us stay tight with those target species we love to chase. So, let's hear who's making the show possible and then jump into the reports. Listen up. AFTCO has a promotional gift for all Great Days Outdoors Podcast Network listeners. They're now offering a camo sunglasses cleaner cloth with any purchase of AFTCO products. For those cold, wet, or windy days, I especially enjoy my weatherproof fabric barricade jacket, as well as my helm insulated fishing gloves. All you got to do to get your coupon code is text LCBFR to 779 345 2918. You'll get subscribed to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. Upgrade your waterfront with Killer Doc's premium dock furniture, built to last a lifetime in marine conditions. Crafted from marine-grade aluminum with a protective anti-corrosion coating, it's tough enough to handle the elements while providing unmatched comfort. Featuring sunbrella cushions with fast-drying, removable covers, our furniture stays securely in place even in storms. Choose from cabanas, club chairs, love seats, tables, and more to create your perfect dockside retreat. Durability meets elegance at Killer Doc. Check out the full collection at killerdoc.com today. Pure Flat slick lures are tried, true, and guide approved. Slick lures catch big speckled trout, redfish, flounder, and more. You can cast them a mile, and they produce a highly erratic baitfish imitation with a twitching retrieve. The tournament winning slick has helped many anglers set personal best records. Whether you're fishing the OG slick, the smaller profile slick junior, or the versatile lil slick, one is sure to find that unforgettable thump we're all after. Visit your local tackle retailer or pureflats.com for your favorite color and rigging combination. Go sling some slicks today. You can't catch them on the sofa. All right, you guys, welcome to this week's show. You know, Christmas is in the air, and but like we've said many times, fish don't have calendars, so they're still just swimming around and eating what they can eat. So, last week we got into some deep dive about the bluefin tuna bite and what's going on offshore. Right now, we're kind of experiencing these temperature swings. So I wanted to scoot back inshore and catch up with Mr. Jesse Wilkins with Long Bay Pointe Bait and Tackle to talk about what's been going on inshore. So welcome back to the show, man. How you been?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me again. It's definitely been an interesting year, but it's been good nonetheless. You know, we've been finding some fish, whether they're in weird spots or not, they're out there. So,
Heck yeah. Well, talking about haven't seen you in a while on the show. When you popped on camera just now, for those that know Jesse, if you follow him on Instagram or the socials and you see him catching all the fish, you probably remember this like super like caveman, bushy hair, giant beard, and you hopped on and I'm like, where's Jesse? What happened to your hair and your beard? What was the inspiration to go
um,
commando on the face?
so the hair was, I got sick and I was sick for like a month. And after just throwing up for like 3 or 4 days, I was like, all right, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm getting this out of the way. And then the no hair and the beard got so bushy. I had a woman at Walgreens. We were talking and she was like, so when do you turn 30? And I was like, I just turned 21, not even 6 months ago. And this woman just asked me when I turned 30. I don't know what's going on here. After that happened, I was like, you know what? I'm shaving the beard. I want like a week or two to where people think I'm my age before I turn the big 22. Because after 21, shit gets real, you know? So
Yeah.
excuse my language, but
No, you're 100% correct, man, and that is too funny. I can identify with that, you know, having had to go bald at a young age and then grow a beard and being tall with a deep voice, you know, you just kind of
yeah,
naturally get pegged for being a little bit older than you are. But one thing is true, age has not limited your experience. You've got a vast experience when it comes to inshore fishing. So you know, for our listeners, kind of just remind them of like your backstory and upbringing with fishing. Like how old were you when you met your first fishing pole, and how old were you when
um,
you met your first fish?
I was definitely pretty young. You know, my family's from Virginia Beach, and then my mom's side of the family's from Key West, Florida. So both of those sides of the family, they grew up fishing, grew up on boats. My dad had a boat when I was a kid. Rest in peace. But when I was a kid, he always wanted to make sure I was on the boat. You know, if he was going
Yeah.
fishing, he was one of those dads where it's like, yo, speckled trout are running. I'm going to the ER on my little boat. I know you have school today, but don't tell your mom you're not going. So like it's kind of one of those things. He was never the best fisherman, but he was always trying to go out there. And that's kind of what made me think, okay, my dad always wanted to fish and he was putting the time into it, but he
Hmm.
wasn't really putting the effort into thinking into it.
Yeah.
I'm young, you know, I got the brain for it. I work at a fishing store and I have since I was 15. Shout out Long Bay.
Yeah.
The best job I could have ever had. I've loved growing up in the shop, but it's really just growing up with my dad and my family. My grandma loves fishing to this day. She'll call me, "Hey, you want to go catch some croaker? I've seen them off the dock or whatnot. Can you bring me some fish bites?" I'm like, "Yeah, grandma, I'm on my way." You know,
Shout
so
out Fish Bites. That's awesome, man.
exactly.
That's so cool that that your dad kind of like instilled that desire to be near the water in you, and then your grandma, and then of course being at the shop, all just kind of makes it possible for you to actually be in that environment. And you've learned some killer tricks along the way. I mean, I don't think I ever see
Yeah.
you go out and get skunked inshore. So what's been biting lately, and what have you been going after?
A lot of the time right now it's strictly striper. In kind of these more coastal bay areas, you know, it's kind of harder to get the trout right now. Obviously there's still some floating around, but a month ago, you know, you'd go out and you'd hit some docks and you're catching 150 little 5 to 9 inch trout, you know. It's
Yeah.
not really like that at this time of the year, especially in my inlet at least. I know
Hmm.
those guys in the ER, they're always slaying trout and whatnot in their spots. There's
And
always trout swimming around.
that's not the emergency room. That's the Elizabeth River,
Elizabeth
right?
River. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
got it.
sir.
No, you're right. I went out probably about a month and a half ago, and it was just a bunch of little hungry dink trout. And
Yeah.
then it was about 3 episodes ago. We talked to Preston Euchel with putting in sport fishing. Sorry, Preston, if you're listening, I
Yeah, I know
apologize.
Preston. I know
Yeah,
Preston. He's got
and
that cool skiff with the tower.
oh yeah, and he was talking about how we should kind of expect the trout bite to start to change and adjust. And then about a week ago, my buddy Luke Burnham called and he was like, "Hey, what's going on with the trout bite? They're not where they were before." And sure enough, what Preston kind of predicted. Talk us through that. Like, what's changed with temperature and how has that affected speckled trout?
I don't know if it's too much of because we're part of that coastal area of the bay, you know, being right next to the mouth. When that northern water comes in, we get the temperatures. So we're going to get the butt of really whatever coastal weather first before those bay temperatures and whatnot. I don't know this for a fact, so don't hold me to this. But usually in this time of the year, my inlet temperatures, this Lynnhaven Inlet area where my bait shop is, tends to drop a little bit quicker than the ones farther back in the bay. Just in my area, you know, obviously you get towards Richmond and stuff like that. It's just colder in general this time of the
Right.
year. But for that weird month that we're having when it's getting colder, I feel like we kind of get that weird butt end in between Norfolk and whatnot, in between James River, to where it's kind of just like we're the harsher conditions in a lot of the time of that, just
Yeah.
because we're getting all the wind, we're getting all that
Right.
ocean tidal fronts and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
Obviously, I don't know that for a fact, but just overseeing all the storms come in every year, the way that I call it the Great Reset this time of the year. If you go out, you'll see the low tides are really low and
Oh
the
yeah.
high tides are very low. Um,
Yeah.
Again, this time of the year, it only tends to happen right before Christmas, right after Christmas, you know, and it's all very calculated with, I don't know exactly what it is scientifically, but there's obviously something doing it. And I know the
Yeah.
ER, they're losing their water, but it's at a slower rate than we are right now. So I
Hmm.
don't know if it just moves up the bay and then it moves down the bay certain years exactly, but it's definitely something to do with that cold water and those fish moving away from that cold water.
Yeah, and we've seen since the new Lynnhaven, or not Lynnhaven, but since the new Lesnar Bridge, we've seen and talked about it with Chris Ludford with Pleasure House Oyster Company, you know, how there is a higher CFM cubic feet per minute of volume of water moving in and out
Yeah.
because there's less obstruction there, which means like when you're talking about water temperatures changing, that influx of cold water coming in when you've got that strong nor'easter. I think we had it, what was it like 3 weeks ago or something? We had
Yeah,
that big
I feel
nor'easter.
like we've got a couple this year, pretty early
Right.
too.
Yeah, and that huge, tide cycle of a 2.5, 3 foot tide cycle that churns over with fresh cold water coming in can, like you said, be a great reset or a sort of a shock to a more sensitive, cold-blooded fish like the speckled trout. They're known
Yeah,
for having their soft mouths, they've got soft bodies, they've got light scales. And then you compare that to like a more rugged fish like a puppy drum or a striper, and then voila, all of a sudden when you go fishing, you can't catch anything but a puppy drum or a striper, and the
Yeah.
speckled trout are almost gone. But if I wanted to try to target a speckled trout right now, how would I adjust my strategy compared to prior to these big temperature swings?
I usually, when it gets colder, surprisingly, I go with the more kind of obscene baits. Excuse me. Like, funny enough, sometimes I'll go out there and I'll throw those skinny 5 inches. NOBN's 5 inches are really thick, but you'll find some that are a little bit skinnier, like a sand eel type of thing or a straight tail. I like those big, obscene baits when they get cold because obviously, like we said, there's not as much fish.
Right.
So when I'm trying to get that one fish to eat, I kind of want to make it worth it for him, you know? When I'm dangling like a little 3 inch gulp, he's got to be heated up. He's got to be ready to eat, fired up, sees that thing, strikes it. When I'm
Yeah.
using those kind of longer baits, just dipping it around in current, whether they're just sitting there staring at it or they're slow and just fat being lazy, it's kind of easier for them to be like, all right, this is a good meal. You know, it's easier for me to use the energy to eat this thing, if that makes sense.
So I've heard you say that before, and I've heard others say that before too. So like, it's kind of crazy to think about, but like, are you essentially saying that like fish have the presence of mind to sort of look at a bait or in their minds food and calculate that it's worth the energy expenditure because of the size of the presented meal?
For sure. I think people don't give fish their credit. Obviously, they're not the smartest animal when you come down to like an IQ standpoint, but
Right.
survival, these fish go through freezing temperatures that we don't even want to go out of our houses in, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously, they thrive in that heat, and that's when they lay eggs, most of them. Obviously, the trout are a little bit weird sometimes,
Right.
but for these fish, they like to spawn in comfortable conditions. And it's the same with humans almost. We feel comfortable in those conditions where it's nice for us to go outside. It's nice for us to, I always say this, if it's super cold outside and I'm going to drive 15 minutes down the road for like a 2.99 little burger, I'm probably going to stay at home where I know I got a big bag of chips and then a big thing of ground beef in the fridge, you know?
True.
If it's
Yeah.
summertime, I'm having fun, I'm out and about, I'm going to go spend that $10 real quick, get a nice meal.
Yeah.
It's not worth it when it's cold. You know, I want to stay in
Right.
the house. I want to stay comfortable.
Right.
Some of those fish, it's not worth it for them to come out of their holes. It's not worth it for them to strike at your bait. You know, when it gets really cold, they're trying to survive.
Right.
So we got to give them a little bit more of a benefit of a doubt. These fish work with the moon. These fish work with temperatures, especially striper work with tides. The ocean tells them how to react. It tells them how to survive. So
Mm.
you need to give them a little bit more credit sometimes with how in tune they are. And that's kind of why I think my style of fishing is kind of personable. I do a lot of sight fishing, whether I'm cobia fishing, inshore fishing, trout fishing. I don't really like to take a lot of casts unless I see that the fish is eating. I'll go
Yeah.
up to a light and I'll see a bunch of fish and I might not even cast at it, you know. I might look at it for 5 or 10 minutes like, what are
Are
they
they?
doing?
Yeah.
What's going on right now?
Yeah.
Obviously I'm fishing, you know, but at the same time, you got to learn to be able to understand when those fish eat and what those fish eat.
Yeah.
Um, so being able to help yourself sometimes, if you're like, dang, I haven't really seen any fish in the past week. When you do find some fish, it really helps me a lot to be like, all right, calm down. I know you really want to catch this fish. You haven't seen one in a while. But what are they doing right now? What are they doing now that gives you the reason to catch them? And you haven't been able to find them for 2 weeks. What's the difference, if that makes
Mm.
sense?
Yeah.
What's changing right now? Before I go spook every other fish and just hook this one little 20-inch redfish, let me gain something from this before I just hook another cookie cutter, you know? And
Yeah.
the people kind of get excited about it. And especially this time of year when stuff gets a little bit tougher
Yeah.
than it is in the summer, stuff like that'll really help you out.
So, man, you've said so much great stuff that has me like reeling back in my mind to some previous conversations we've had, which is just a reminder to like really submit yourself to being a student of the environment and considering the environment and the context clues that are going on.
For
So
sure.
I want to go back to you talked about for speckled trout, like if I was going to try to target speckled trout right now, even though it's cold outside, but we've got this like little warm front happening over the next couple of days coming into, the weekend before Christmas. And if I wanted to, use some of these larger 5-inch profile baits to maybe get a strike, that helps me kind of cue in on what to adjust from a tackle perspective. But when it comes to like my leader material and how I work that bait and where I work that bait, what other adjustments are you making if you wanted to target speckled trout?
Especially when I'm doing jigging like that, people don't really think it's as big of a difference, but I really believe this makes a big difference with jigging and just artificial baits in general. A loop knot over a uni knot when you're putting it on the bait.
Mm,
I could do a test for you even if you ever wanted me to. The difference is insane. You tie a uni knot, hold the leader, and just go ahead and bounce it like this, and you'll see it kind of just
yeah, bounce back and
tie that
forth.
loop knot, you give it that full 360 for that eyelet to kind of move around. That thing will go crazy, start
Right.
moving all types of directions. That's
Yeah.
always a start. Obviously, it's not the biggest thing, but it's very easy. Tie it on a uni knot, take the extra step, do the little tie the shoes method first, get you a loop knot. That will help your action to like an undescribable amount, in my opinion.
I agree. And do you also, the water's a lot clearer right now. Do you
Mhm.
also step down your leader material and make sure that you're
Usually,
using
especially when
fluoro?
I'm going for trout, I'm weird. When I'm going for trout, I go with the lightest I possibly can. I don't usually target trout per se, but a lot of the times when I go out fishing and I'm like, there's a bunch of trout around, like, let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Like 10, 15 pound mono with like a really 1500 size reel. Those are always they're fun and they're that small for a reason. You get more of that line feel to it. You can finesse it a little bit more. Um, and that's one of those things too. People say speckled trout guys are weird about what they use, but I find reels and rods sometimes I'll never be able to replace the way that thing feels.
Right.
That
Yeah.
tip, make sure you get like a good flimsy rod, one that you're going to be able to feel what your bait's doing. That's really what matters because even if you hook a 30-inch speckled trout, I can most likely promise you it's not going to be over 15 pounds. So that 15-pound mono, if you're working it with your drag right, you should be
You're
fine.
good. Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah, and a trout bite. I mean, I back in my early days of fishing, I speckled trout fished a lot. I've got a nice mounted speckled trout that I caught in 2012 or 13 that was 6 pounds,
Yeah.
and that was a great speckled trout for me. And but even I remember that bite and several like it. Even a large trout, the bite is so soft and so subtle, especially when you're fishing in cold temperatures. And so
For sure.
I really, it resonates so much with me what you're saying about that specific type of, rod and reel, that super duper light line, and then using a loop knot. And I was taught by a very old man who I learned to fish from, who used to be a tournament bass fisherman before he
Yeah.
turned onto speckled trout. And he always used to make me tie on a little teeny, ring. We'd put a little teeny ring on every single bait so that it had that action, and that was for him easier than tying loop knots. But a loop knot,
Yeah.
same thing. And they even have those little speed clips, which are nice to use. The
Yeah,
really
you don't
really
even have to
small
tie
ones.
the knot. Just give
Yeah,
it some room to move around. Don't cinch it right down on the eyelet of the bait.
right.
Because crazy to think, I honestly didn't even learn this until probably 6 months ago. I was a uni type of guy.
Yeah,
Recently, I've started tying FGs and all those crazy knots just because I've been bored. It's cold. Um, but that's one of those things that it really has upped my game, especially using a lot of artificials. It's just
yeah,
harder to catch bait when it gets cold too.
right.
So artificials are always handy.
Yeah, and this kind of goes way into the weeds, but like, would you say that it also gives you a little bit of an advantage to, well, like, especially with a speckled trout, because they got those soft mouths, a uni versus a loop knot when it comes to like fatigue on the hook hole? Do you think that loop knot helps to keep the bait moving more freely to eliminate that chance of it
For
wallowing out the
sure.
hole? Yeah,
For sure. That's one of those things where I use a lot of fish finder rigs, Carolina rigs, as a lot of guys call them, just fishing like off the beach and off jetties and whatnot, dropping baits. And I've learned that a lot of guys really like to use like you want to have a tighter drag when you're using that fish finder and a circle hook so it hits.
yeah,
I can 100% say that I have felt fish head shake a hook out with a uni knot, if that makes sense.
it
To
does.
where I've thought, did I have too much tension? Was my drag too tight? Was I reeling in when I shouldn't have been? But in reality, that stiffness right there, marlin fishing will really teach you this too. Guys that marlin fish, they're very, very anal about where they have their hook, where their knot is, how it can move around in the line. And that's all for the same physics. You know, if a marlin eats a hook, if a fish eats a hook and it's at the top of its mouth and he's eating it from the top, it's probably not going to hook too well. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Oh
So
yeah.
that definitely goes with what you're saying. I think for sure, giving it that extra room just to where it kind of keeps the hook in place in their mouth to where it can move around on the line instead of moving around in their mouth, like you're saying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, we should have been talking all about this stuff last week, or the weeks leading up to Troutzilla, which you
Yeah,
guys just wrapped up. But it's probably good we didn't give them all the secrets. They needed to
for
figure it
sure.
out for
It's
themselves. But
mostly the kids this year too. We had, I think, 25 kids and then around 16 or 17
wow.
adult boats.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids competed. You know, I don't know if a lot of kids caught, but at the end of the day, they tried. Whether they won or lost, that's motivation to keep winning. And then if you lost, motivation to win one. You
Yeah.
know,
No, that's a killer turnout. That's quite a few more than we had last year, isn't it?
for sure.
Yeah.
It was fun to deal with. I mean, obviously, I would love to fish in them. Um, I'm not gonna do that to everybody yet. Maybe one day when I get a little bit more bored, I'm like, all right, forget y'all. I'm coming out of retirement. But
Uh,
for now, I
uh,
let them have their fun in it. You know,
Yeah, no, that's good. I competed last year because it was inaugural and fun. I didn't have the chance to compete this year, but I'll never forget Brady Berman. Y'all's now co-owner with Connie, and shout out Brady. He's brought so much cool stuff to the shop, and I know Connie's appreciated the partnership and some of the modernization from his technical
oh
background
my
that he's
god,
brought to the table. And the shop's really kind of, morphed into something really, really cool. It's always been a key part of the local culture, but it's like now I feel like it's really like stepped into its identity and its purpose to serve the community here
for
with
sure.
things like Troutzilla. And Brady last year gave me that tiny little kid's fishing bowl with a gigantic, cobia killer jig on it.
Classic.
I was like, and Eric Myers was, it was like, I think August, he called me out of the blue, Captain Merrick with Heads and Tails, and he goes, "Hey, do you still have that little rod with the cobia jig on it?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "We need to go catch a cobia on it." I was like, "I don't think that's going to happen, buddy."
Yeah.
We didn't try it. But I do want to shift into the striper, which is obviously a lot of fun this time of
Yeah.
year. And, I saw your post the other day, which is kind of what, when it caused me to want to reach out. You were like, "Oh, I just had to saw him hitting. I had to pull over to the side of the road and catch one." So
That was
talk,
one of the coolest eats of my life, for sure.
that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about the striper fishing right now and how you target them and what kind of bait you use and sort of your technique for getting striper bites. And then remind us, for those listening, what the current regulations are as well.
Cool. Yeah. So I believe. Let me double check. You know, I got my sheet handy at all times. But striper season for the fall season ends here in December 31st for the bay and in on the coastal season. So December 31st, you got till the end of the month.
Okay.
On in the bay, which is going to be that line, pretty much the bridge. I could say Cape Henry for the people who fish around here. They know where that Cape Henry maritime line is.
Yeah.
That's going to be the cutoff between coastal and bay.
Okay.
Obviously, if you're on that bay side, that's the bay. If you're on the ocean side, that's coastal. So Rudy Inlet, that's going to have coastal regulations. To whereas Lynnhaven Inlet, Little Creek, all that good stuff, that's going to have those bay regulations. The bay regulation is 19 to 24 inches, and you're allowed to keep one per person. And then the coastal limit is 28 to 31 inches, and again, you're allowed to keep one per person. So
Got
it's
it.
not a huge slot, but I'm not mad about that. I mean, I don't think you really need more than one striper unless you got a big family to feed at home, you know, or you're a bigger guy. I
Yeah.
mean, a half of a striper is plenty for me. Obviously, I'm not the biggest guy out there. I'm pretty skinny, you know, noodle arms, but half a striper gets me good for the rest of the day. So I'm cool with my one limit, you know.
Oh yeah, it's a special treat too because striper's so delicious, and
Really is.
every now and then, if I'm fortunate enough to catch one, my girlfriend loves some striper. It's like one of our favorite things to eat. We'll do these like buffalo striper nuggets. Oh, they're
Heck
so
yeah.
good. Or we'll take the striper and keep the fillet whole intact and stuff it with some Chesapeake Bay blue crab meat from Sam Russ Seafood, and that's just like a meal to die for. But
Money right there.
yeah, talking about it's getting me hungry. But like sometimes I go out there, man, and I just feel like I can't connect, can't figure them out, don't know what's going on. Or like you talked about earlier, you'll see them in the light and you're like casting and they're just completely ignoring it. So like
Yeah.
Help me. What am I doing
So
wrong?
striper are almost completely current driven. Obviously, sorry, I keep getting phone calls over here. Can you see me? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. So obviously they like bait, they need to eat. But current is almost everything for them. In the way they eat, in the way they hang out, the way that they regulate themselves in these low of temperatures. I've found, especially fishing inshore, very, very hard for me to find a striper if there's no current around. So whether that's a
Interesting.
pipe coming out of the street, a spillway type of thing, a bridge, whatnot, they really like that current and those little eddies in between the current where they can kind of sit. A bait flies by and they just hit it with a little,
Yeah.
they don't have to move. Comes in front of them, they eat. Current makes it easy for them. They can stay warm by moving their body. They got to swim, but at the same time, they could take a nap if they want. They're not moving around using all that energy to
Yeah.
move place to place, swimming miles around. Current's really good. If I go up to a bridge and I see pylons, I'm going to cast current, hit the pylon, slow down a little bit, right where that pylon is, that eddy right there in between. That's going to be the money spot for me usually. And again, when I'm targeting striper, I like using big, obnoxious baits. I'm
Okay.
catching 18-inch striper some nights on 6-inch baits this thick. They're eating sausages.
Wow.
That's more fun for me too, but also at the same time, it really does get their attention.
Yeah.
Like the speckled trout, when stuff's slow, they like current, so you don't really have to slow down for them as much as you do for the trout. The trout like the current too, but it's not the end of the world for them. They'll hang out in some flats,
Yeah.
but when it gets cold, that striper they really need that current. So anywhere where I could see current, pipes are my favorite. Like that, what you were saying, the truck. I go around in my truck and I drive around. I see a pipe going from a pond to the inlet. I'm getting out of my truck. I'm taking a couple casts on the pipe. Sometimes I'll get out with a headlamp, roll down the window, shine it on the pipe. If I see a fish on it, I get out, take a cast. If there's no fish on it, I keep going.
So they're
But
actually
current,
similar to freshwater bass in that regard. Yeah.
exactly. That's kind of where I figured that out on. I fished a lot of pungo growing up, and pungo. There's a lot of drainage dishes, random ponds in people's yard that go through from canals and whatnot. And every time I wanted to catch a fish, I'd find a pipe. Wherever the current was moving, you drop like a little bluegill on there, a largemouth would eat it. And a striper is a bass, so
Yeah.
I figured it would be somewhat the same thing. And it is the same as when how bass largemouth like Cincos, they like those big, stupid,
Yeah.
slow baits off the bottom. Sometimes that current, when you get like a really rocky or a really sandy bottom and it changes what it's called substrate, it'll go from rock to sand. You're going to get a little bit of like a frictional point for that current. So say they're sitting on the bottom right when that substrate changes, using something like a Cinco presentation, obviously not a worm on a wacky rig,
Yeah.
but like a long eel looking thing on a heavy jig head. I call it a Ned rig. Ned rigs in the wintertime are a cheat code. People hate me every time I say this. So like, stop telling people that, stop telling people that. But Ned rigs, anything with that flat jig head, just a little long thing floating up like that, it gets their attention. When I'm fishing off the bottom, I'm trying to use something like that. I
Yeah.
want it to sit still. I'm going to move it a little bit, but I want it to get that weird tail action. Like it's
Yeah.
sitting there trying to swim against the current, eating the rocks, sifting away.
Oh,
Um,
so is that the sort of makeup of it? Like it actually is a
yeah,
floating
so
lure on a
it's
on
a
a heavy lead?
floating plastic on a heavy lead with a small hook. So
Okay.
it's pretty much a jig head with a flat head. And I'll usually use a half an ounce to an ounce. It's kind of hard to get Ned
Wow.
rig heads that big. So you can use, that's why I like NLBN so much. Their
Yeah.
head flat. NLBN heads are really good because they got that flat head. So they'll kind of do that Ned rig presentation.
Yeah.
But when they're slow, they're sitting on the bottom. It's where the water is going to be not the warmest, but it's not moving around. It's not hurting them in any way. They're like, they could just kind of sit there at the bottom. It's
Yeah.
just a good place for them to chill. So
Yeah.
when I'm throwing that Ned rig, it's making commotion almost by itself. The water makes it move. It's a floating plastic on a sinking jig. So you just want it to kind of sit in front of them. I always think of a jellyfish, like a little
Yeah.
squid. I want it to sit in front of them and be like, yo, what's up? Like I'm in your territory right now. I'm not going to move. and I'm not going to be fast or anything. You're just going to eat me because you're pissed off.
Yeah, and
And
I'm
when it gets
available.
cold like that, especially with the redfish, sometimes that's what you got to do. I have videos in my phone of me walking around the jetties, and you just see schools of redfish sitting there,
Asleep,
not a
frozen.
thought behind their eyes,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
sitting still. You got
yeah.
guys going with nets, netting them up and everything. I mean, I get the redfish to eat those Ned rigs no matter how frozen they are. So
Oh
that's
wow.
always a fun bait, and it works for a striper in that same kind of concept. If you're finding a place, say you're sweeping around, I call it sweeping, moving a bait through current. You're like, all right, it's rocky right here, but past that, it's not rocky. That's when I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna get me a heavy flat jig head, something long, and I'm going to kind of sit right there where that substrate changes, the gravel changes. So it's
Yeah.
going to leave a little frictional point right there where the water's coming down. The fish will kind of sit right there in that crevice and just wait for stuff to swim by, stuff on the bottom. Just open their mouth. They don't even
Oh,
have to move left or right. It's just,
yeah.
you know,
It's cool hearing you talk about it like that because I'm thinking about the striper bites that I've had, especially like in the Lynn Haven River. Um, I've had most of my luck doing I used to bass fish as well, and I got pretty good at, slinging a bait underneath a dock, which is
yeah,
tricky to
skip
do.
past.
Yeah, and most of my bites for striper have been when the current's moving and being able to use a heavier, like a 3/4 ounce and sling it under a dock a good 4 or 5 feet. And then typically it's on the drop and it's normally almost immediate. Bang! As soon as it gets up under that dock, boom. And like you're saying, they're just sitting there kind of wait for something easy to come by. And it's normally a big, obnoxious, I typically use the 5 or 6 inch fluke
Yeah.
with a little bit of Procure on it, and I'll
Bubble
sling that
gum,
under
man.
there.
That hot pink is a cheat code.
Yeah, yeah. And that's been but I've not been able to explore. Like it's like I'm kind of a simpleton. Like I'll find one thing that works, and I just kind of like gravitate to that. So it's cool hearing
Understandable.
you talk about this, which is something totally different than I've ever tried before. Which I definitely am going to have to try now because
Yeah.
I know how many fish you catch, so I trust the source considerably. But that's really cool to think about how the current impacts, their desire to eat. So quite literally, are you saying like at a slack tide, they are pretty much not likely to
When it
bite?
gets cold like this, yeah. In the summertime, it's almost the opposite. When I find striper in the summertime, that slack tide's kind of when the bait all gets pressed together. The current's not moving it around. It just kind of congratulates. You know what I'm trying to say?
Congregates,
Congratulates.
congregates.
Congregates. There
There's
you
the
go.
word.
Yeah. Congregates together. There's not anything pushing it around. It's just
Right.
like putting a big ball of energy together. That's when the striper in the summertime kind of get active, especially off the beach. Those slack tides, peak tides, they really like that.
Yeah.
Just bait coming up, moving with the waves.
Right.
In the wintertime like this, I almost never find them in slack areas. The flats,
Interesting.
obviously, fish move.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this and don't be like, oh, he said they're not there. I found one in the flats. I
Yeah.
found striper in the flats, but if I'm really going and I'm like, all right, I want to hit 3 spots tonight and I want to find a striper, the flats is probably not my go-to this time of the year. They
Got it.
like to breed in the flats and they like to eat in the flats when it gets a little bit warmer. But this time of the year, current 100% of the time, that's what I'm looking for.
Got it. Very cool. Man, I'm just gonna have to come, when do you get off, tomorrow night? I'm just gonna have to come by the shop in the boat and snag you and some of
I'll
those
be off. I
NLBNs.
don't work tomorrow, actually. So if you want to pick me up, just call me and I'm ready. I'm out there.
We're gonna we'll have to do a follow up where we talk about how many striper we catch in a night by hitting some of those darker,
Yeah,
deeper spots and during peak current. Now, between incoming or outgoing tide, is there a
outgoing is
preference?
my favorite.
Outgoing.
Most of the time, outgoing. A lot of those pipes that I say I'm fishing, especially the ones that when I'm in my truck, are usually like golf course ponds or freshwater ponds that only get that runoff on outgoing.
Got
So
it.
those pipes won't be moving too much of the time unless it's pulling into that pond. When it's pulling into the ponds or those weird bodies of water, I don't really tend to have any luck on it. They like to sit there in the current, wait for stuff to come out.
You're so it's funny, like if you watch like you have a dog, right?
Yes, sir.
So like you watch dogs with their patterns and behaviors with, food. They're so keen to the slightest little thing. They hear a crinkle, and they know the bag's coming out, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And also watching their predictability too, in terms of like their habits and the things that they do. Like, and it reminds you that animals become so acutely aware of their environment and it drives their behavior. So as you were talking about the difference between outgoing and incoming, I'm like, oh my gosh, duh. So
Yeah.
I'm picturing that you've got these, like you said, these golf course runoffs and this, that, and the other, where probably like insects, small rodents, this, that, and the other get swept up in that current when it's starting to move out. And then if I'm a fish and I know that, like, hey, typically when I feel the current moving like this, often food kind of
Comes
magically
from here.
appears from
Exactly.
here. And so then they develop a pattern that is like, hey, when this is happening, I'm going to be in these areas because I know it's going to be an easy meal.
Exactly.
And I think we see that in nature, across the board, whether it's, the Sahara or fish or, land animals. Animals are very good at learning because, like you said, they're survivalists. They're very good at learning where food is and making sure they're positioned to be there when it's ready
I'm
to
sure
eat.
we'd be that good at it too if we didn't have fast food restaurants and phones and DoorDash. People kind of forget like we're animals too, like,
Right.
and that's kind of where people call me a hippie for it all the time, but it's kind of just you got to degrade yourself almost sometimes when you're fishing. You're like, all right, what makes me think that I'm like this big and bad guy that can just come anywhere on the water and get these things to eat?
Right.
Like this is their world. I'm
Yeah.
stepping in on it and I'm trying to have fun in their home.
Right.
Like
Right.
it does honestly get degrading sometimes. Like
Yeah.
some days I go home, I'm like, damn, like what is wrong with me? Like why? I suck. And then the next day you go out and you're like, I got it figured out. I got it
Yeah.
figured out. That's the beauty of it.
Uh,
It's a degrading, loving sport. And
yeah.
fish will really teach you that. And they'll just teach you that life is hard. And as funny as it is to say, fishing almost makes me thankful for my life. I
Right.
see those mullets swimming down the inlet, scared for their life 24/7. Could you imagine being a mullet? Like
I
that's
think
got to be the worst thing ever.
I think being a peanut bunker is probably
Peanut bunker.
the
That's
single worst creature to be swimming in the ocean. You get eaten by everything. Everything is trying to eat you.
it's impressive to me that bunker can get as big as they do without being eaten.
Oh, I know.
Like
It's wild. One of the largest bunker I ever saw was way back up in the western branch,
mhm.
I think. Is the western branch the one that goes back by Steiny's?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Eastern branch,
Eastern
Western
branch.
branch is next to the Elizabeth.
That's right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Um, so I was way up there by Steiny's and was throwing a cast net for shrimp, and it was 14 inches long, 14-inch long bunker. I couldn't believe it. I'm like,
Can
what are
you
you
still?
doing back here?
You used to be able to get citations for those. I don't know if they still do those anymore. I know you
For
can get mullet
bunker?
citations. Yeah. You could used to get bunker citations. My buddy's grandpa has a couple. I have a mullet citation from like 2 years ago. I filled out another one this year just for fun. If you
That's
catch a
hilarious.
mullet over, I think it's a pound and a half,
It's a
you got
citation.
yourself a mullet citation. Yeah.
That is too funny, man. I also thinking about citations made me think about the inside of the shop. You guys just came out with a new line of beanies and what
Yeah,
else?
actually here. We got some beanies, we got a bunch of backpacks, some dad hats. We're gonna have some new sweatshirts and whatnot in here very soon. Feeling
Very
like an
cool.
old man right here trying to figure out how to flip my camera.
Oh no, you're good because this is
So we
just
can
audio.
do this. Oh, okay, cool. Well, we
That's
got some
awesome.
beanies, we got the
Oh yeah.
saddle, we got the gray, we got a bunch of hats and whatnot.
Yep. And you guys got a full line of Bahio and Costa sunglasses and some killer sweatshirts. The new logo is so cool. I love the new Long Bay logo. Several of my friends have some of the sun shirts and whatnot. It's a dope looking logo.
Heck yeah. Yeah, man, we got everything. We got new reels. I got some Daiwas right here. I got everything, man.
That's awesome. So if somebody's like, hey, I want to get outfitted, what days of the week are you there working where they can come by and see you and get some help, get some tips, get some new gear?
I've had Fridays off during the winters recently, which is really nice. So any day other than Friday, I'll most likely be here 12 to 5. We got
Okay.
some older cats that work for us, so they like waking up early, getting off early. So lucky for me, I'm not here in the morning usually, but 12 to 5 on the weekdays and Saturday and Sunday, I'm always here.
Awesome. Heck yeah, man. Well, that's super cool, man. And if folks want to give a call to the shop or find you on the socials, what's the number for the shop and what's the best way they can find you on socials?
Our social media is Long Bay Pointe. My social media is Sov Bastard. If you ever want to watch some fishing videos, if you ever need anything from the shop, we do all our updates on Instagram and whatnot. So
Nice.
you'll get the first thing there. It's kind
Very
of
cool.
bad that I don't know the shop number off the top of my head now that I
Funny
think about it.
enough,
Pretty horrible.
I do only because it has a little call out to the 757. So it's 757-481-7517. So I'm sure back in the day, whenever, because a 481 number is like an OG Virginia Beach number. So is, I think, 427. I'm kind of nerding out from my days in the IT business. But yeah, it's 481-7517. So I'm sure back in the day when they were looking at phone numbers, they're like, oh, that's cool. It's got 757 in it. So
Yeah, right?
757. And all you have to remember is the 481. You would know it's 757. So 757-481-7517. Easy day. Man, any other cool tips or tricks that you want to share with us right here before the holidays for striper fishing or really any kind of fishing that you're doing?
I will say, and one thing I say at work when people ask me questions more than anything is find your sweep. I know that sounds hilarious. I use that word sweep like strictly. That's look, I live around my sweeps. My rod is my broomstick. And what I mean by sweep is if you're fishing current or you're fishing a certain depth, look at how fast that current's moving and what weight how fast it's moving certain weights around. So if I want to cast at a certain spot, we were talking a lot about current. I want to make sure I know where in the current I need to cast to make sure my bait gets there. And that's kind of your
Ah,
sweep. And it changes from spot to spot. It's really hard to explain. But when you figure out your sweep, you will come back to me and say you'll understand. The sweep is everything in fishing.
so I'm trying to picture it. And like you're saying, it is hard to explain. I'm having a hard time, conceptualizing it. So I'm going back in my memory to the last time I was fishing in the river and it was a fast moving incoming tide. My fish finder was lit up. I actually want to pull the picture up and show it to you, and you tell me what you think was on the fish finder. It was right before I left for a trip. Let me see if I can find it here. But I think I'm understanding what you're saying because it's like I was trying to get a bait down to the fish and I was really struggling with it. Um,
Yeah.
and it was like I couldn't seem to. Okay, here's the picture. So this has got side scan as well as just normal chirp. So this is right next to the green buoy across from the shop. So between
Hmm.
the green buoy that's at the point. So this is in the middle of the deep side, headed towards the Great Neck Bridge. So what do you think is on the screen right there?
Huh. It's an interesting looking one.
It's down near the bottom.
Yeah, it looks like one mass of bait almost just being attacked from the outside.
That's what I
Um,
thought.
I'd say maybe bigger trout or bluefish. Obviously, it could be some striper since you're sitting in the current and you can see that hump right there. That's kind of what I was talking about the substrate change when I would use
Yeah.
one of those jigs. You see how they're sitting right off that hump?
Yeah. Oh,
That's
I
going
didn't
to
even
add
notice that before. Interesting. You're
exactly.
right. They're right on the other side of that hump.
That hump's going to add a little eddy for them. So if they sit on the underside of that hill, all that bait, all those fish will move over their heads and they don't have to move position at all. They just sit there,
I,
whoop, whoop, suck
I
them all
didn't
up.
even notice that. That's
So
so funny.
that's a good telltale sign right there. But again, trout do the same thing. They don't like the current, or it's not that they don't like it as much. They're not as thick as the striper are. Striper are
Yeah.
big, broody fish. They're almost built for the current.
Yeah.
So
So
stuff like
interesting.
that really attracts trout. So they can just chill in that area. Current's still moving bait by, but they don't have to use all that energy to keep up with the current.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And, the water temperature was like 56 degrees. And I think I had a half ounce jig head on. And what I was struggling with was trying to figure out, like, okay, do I just drop it straight down and try to like float right over top of them and like bounce it on the
Hmm.
bottom? So, like, if you were in that situation that I was in, you're in the boat, current's moving, you see this massive fish. are you to get your sweep right? Are you keep trying to keep the boat stationary and like casting upstream or downstream of it? Like, what are you doing if you're
I
going to try
would
to sweep it in?
probably I would keep the boat stationary. I would cast probably. I know exactly the buoy you're talking about, so it's not too hard for me to judge the current. If we're talking like peak current tides, I'd probably cast maybe 30 to 20 feet in the opposite direction of where I would want it to. So say the current's coming towards me, I'm casting away from me 30 feet so
Okay,
that it moves it instead of just wanting it to go straight down, it'll move in an arch.
got
And
it.
that's kind of exactly what that sweep is. It's that arch, finding what arch you need in certain areas. If you go down to Florida, you know, there's a lot of guys that fish inshore. There's a lot of guys that fish on the bridge. And if you ask them, like, yo, what are you sweeping? That's like that one question you don't ask. What do you mean, what am I sweeping? It's my sweep. Like, I'm
Yeah,
doing my sweep. I'm sweeping my jig. I'm doing my sweep. And
that's
that's the
awesome.
thing. You cast where you think you want to cast. And once you figure out your sweep, you know what's on the bottom. Because usually when you're sweeping, it's called sweeping. You're going through the bottom, you know, covering
Yeah,
as much ground as you can on the bottom. You
right.
start to figure out what is there. All right, I just bumped a rock. I bump that rock every time I cast right here. Oh, that had to be a fish. I've never bumped anything
Yeah,
right here, if that makes sense. And that's
yeah,
kind of where figuring out the sweep goes. It's a very, very open term too. So like it's not just that. When I say sweep, in my perspective, it almost means your method. When you figure something out that you like doing, whether you're catching fish on it or not, continue doing it because you like the way it feels.
right.
Um, I've gone, like you were saying, I've fished my whole life since I was 10, 12 years old. And I definitely wasn't a good fisherman until 2 or 3 years ago, you know,
Yeah,
when I got old enough to be like, okay, instead of just going out for fun, it was like, all right, this is fun, but I'm also going to learn from it. I'm not just willy nilly throwing stuff around, hoping something gets bit. That's when
yeah,
you figure out your sweep.
yeah,
It's really just studying your cast, feeling what your bait's doing, every little tick, every little touch, how fast you need to go, figuring out what spots the current moves harder than others in, you
yeah,
know. That's
yeah.
that's all goes towards the sweep. And it's a very general term, but once you figure out your sweep, you will understand exactly what I'm saying. And that's literally the best way I can explain it.
No, I love it, and I love your passion behind it too, because it's like inspiring to those who go out and try and try and try and fail and fail and fail, and that gets frustrating after a while. And it's like it's
For
either going to
sure.
drive you to quit or drive you to become a student and become better.
Hmm.
And man, you've dropped so much valuable knowledge from your experience, toolbox. And if folks are listening, man, hopefully they were able to grab several things that they can definitely deploy on their next fishing trip to hopefully be more successful. So, man, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing some of your stories. Before we wrap up, I want to hear one of like what's been your biggest striper so far this season, and what'd you catch it on?
I caught so this season I haven't striper fished from a boat at all. This
Okay.
season it's kind of been one of those things. Obviously it's more than just a seasonal goal right now, but I really want to catch a 40-inch striper from land. I see guys go and do it in the bay on their boats all the time. You know, big whoop, that's a seasonal thing. I see 50 inchers in the shop every week this time of the year. Like that's
Yeah.
I rarely see guys, at least around us, you know, in Jersey, those guys slam. I never see guys really targeting them from land other than off the beach. And
Right.
the beach and land are a little bit different for me. I'm not the biggest fan of beach fishing. I really like those urban spots, you know, like when I catch a fish a place where a fish shouldn't be, it makes me feel more amazing than I can explain. It's
Yeah.
the coolest feeling ever. So like again, that current makes it easier for me to do that with these striper. And I was just running around finding some little, you know, natural spillways and pipes. And I found this one in northern Norfolk. Like it's out there. I never go on this side of town. I'm sweeping around a big purple on purple 5-inch NLBN, the one of the big fat ones. And I'm sweeping it in the current. I don't catch anything after like 20 casts. I'm like, all right, I'll try over here. I'm gonna come back and give it one more cast right here. There's no way there's not a fish. Fish over there, 20 minutes. I'm like, dang, how is there not a fish here? I go back right as I start reeling that thing in, chomp. I'm like, this one's bigger. I use a big rod and reel when I'm fishing for striper and close quarters, just so they
Yeah.
can't get me into anything. I'm cupping the spool. You're not going to pull a click of drag, you know?
Yeah.
This thing starts pulling drag, and I'm like, I have not felt that before.
Yeah.
This is awesome. He's pulled some drag. I get him in. I measured him on my rod. My rod measured to 35 inches, but I'm saying 34 because it was a rod measurement. You know,
That's
I
a
made a little edit
stud.
on it. I made a video for it. No one's even talked crap about it being smaller than I said it was. So for me, that's good. You know, I post on the internet.
That's
I
really
was
good.
prepared for people to be like, even if I put a tape measure down, you know,
Yeah.
people are like, there's no way that's that big.
Yeah.
So 34, the rod, I got a 35 mark on my rod too. You know, I keep
Yeah.
that thing on my rod. That 35, I got a 40, I got a 45 and a 50. It's my cobia rod. I keep it for everything. That was the coolest one yet, you know.
That's
Obviously, I got to
awesome.
get my stupid ass out the house with a tape measure. But I swear the tape measure is a little jinx. Every time I get a tape measure, I swear from land it's not good luck.
Now we
Same
got to
with the
get you
net.
we got to get you one of those Troutzilla boards
The board would be sick.
that they hooked you up with. I think I've actually got one, man. I could totally give it to you. But that's a hell of a goal, a 40-inch striper from land. That's dope.
I mean, I know I can go out and get it done from the beach, but it's not fun knowing you can get it done, in my opinion, if that makes sense. There's,
It does, and I like that idea of like the sort of juxtaposition of catching it where it doesn't where you wouldn't think it should be, like
yeah,
behind a warehouse in the middle of Norfolk where there's like a tiny little maybe 20-foot
yup,
wide spillway or whatever the case, and it's like boom, you just made it happen and it's awesome,
yes, sir.
So
That's the best feeling in the world for me.
that's awesome. Well, as a quick recap, folks, if you want to get up with Jesse and get some gear, get some tackle, go see him at Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle, 757-481.
7571.
Close, 7517.
7517. We're getting it. I'm sorry. I'm
You're
young. I
getting it.
never
You're
had to
getting it.
memorize phone numbers.
Brady, if you're listening, Brady, he's gonna have the phone number down pat by the
Ask
time
me
that you see
tomorrow
Meg.
morning. I'll have it. I'll
You'll
have it.
have it. You'll have it. And like you said, any day of the week except Friday, and then Saturdays and Sundays, 12 to 5.
Yes, sir.
Dude, thanks for dropping some knowledge on us, man. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me as always. It was a great time.
It really was. Folks, that's going to wrap up a super cool in-depth look into inshore fishing for speckled trout and stripers specifically. Remember the key takeaways, and now I'm forgetting. What is it? Define your sweep or
Learn your sweep,
learn
define your sweep, whatever you want to call it. Figure out your sweep, whether that means fishing in current, fishing the flats, what you're fishing with. When you figure out what I'm saying, you'll understand. Figure out your sweep in current. Current this time of year is a God save.
That's awesome. Find your sweep. Folks, you heard her here first. I hope everybody has an awesome Christmas. Enjoy time with your loved ones. Stay warm, eat some good meals, and make sure that you show some gratitude and look for an opportunity to serve somebody around you that might be in need. And we're going to look forward to chatting with you real soon. Until next time, tight lines to you guys, and peace out. Pure Flat Slick Lures are tried, true, and guide approved. Slick lures catch big speckled trout, redfish, flounder, and more. You can cast them a mile, and they produce a highly erratic bait fish imitation with a twitching retrieve. The tournament winning slick has helped many anglers set personal best records. Whether you're fishing the OG slick, the smaller profile slick junior, or the versatile lil slick, one is sure to find that unforgettable thump we're all after. Visit your local tackle retailer or pureflats.com for your favorite color and rigging combination. Go sling some slicks today. You can't catch them on the sofa.
Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Black Buffalo products are intended for adults age 21 and older who are consumers of nicotine or tobacco.
If you're 21 or older and use nicotine or tobacco, it's time you charge ahead to Black Buffalo, America's only credible smokeless tobacco alternative. Black Buffalo dips just like the real thing, but without the tobacco leaf or stem. Get it now at Wawa, Circle K, Sheetz, Love's, Pilot, Racetrack, and many more that you can see on their store locator at blackbuffalo.com. Black Buffalo Tobacco Alternative is everything you love about dip, nothing you don't. Serious shallow water anglers count on Stay Put Anchor to do exactly what the name says. Keep smaller boats locked in place. Fast, quiet, and without dropping a heavy, noisy hook. Built in the USA and designed for boats under 24 feet, Stay Put's solid fiberglass pole spikes pair with marine-grade bow, stern, or drill-free motor mounts for quick installation. So more time spent fishing and less rigging. Choose from 6-foot to 12-foot pole options and the versatile super handle to stake out on flats, sandbars, or in the pads. Affordable, dependable, and proven by anglers nationwide. Learn more or build a custom kit at stayputanchor.com. All right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, to get your free AFCO Camo Sunglasses Cleaner Cloth, text the acronym LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get your promo code and be added to our email list so we can send you the new show each week. You guys keep on whacking them and be safe out there.